It was certainly a race to behold, a good one if you stuck out for it. We're going to talk about it here on the Spin Move iRacing Network Featured League race recap as we take on the Ghost Racing Cup Series. And welcome back here to the Spin Move iRacing Network Featured League Race Recap Show. My name is Zach, and I'm here with my buddy David. Say hello to the internet, David.
Hi, Zach. Welcome back, everyone. As you mentioned, a very different style of racing from where we started to where we finished this race. Excited to get into all of it here with you and excited to talk about some of the finer points, especially as that race continued on.
Yeah, so let's get into it. We are recapping the Ghost 300 at Charlotte, the longest race of the Ghosts Racing Cup Series inaugural season here on iRacing. And there was quite a bit to behold here at this race. As always, we're going to go over our top finishers and point standings, and then we're going to talk about the very real reality that this race proved to be, quite tedious to watch, at least for the first half or so of the race, but then turned into a gem of a performance in the back half of the contest. And then we're also going to talk about how tire strategy really determined the winner of this thing. So we're going to turn off the rundown here. We're going to take a look at top finishers here, David. Let's take a look here as the number 36 machine, Spees, takes the win here. Go down through the list here and kind of give us your thoughts on the day here at Charlotte.
So these drivers that finished in the top 10, congrats to all of them for sticking it out through this race. The beginning, as we already mentioned, was a bit rough and took quite a bit of time to make it through those initial laps. But as this race continued on, it really started to come down to tire strategy, drivers being smart, and really leaning in and pushing that car to its limits when it came to using the tires that they had available and then making the right call to be in the right pit strategy, fuel strategy come the end of this race. So, congrats to everyone who finished in the top 10. Not going to forget about you, Mr. Zach Woods. You are on there, our 10th place finisher. Congrats to you. Also, picking up a few stage points in that race. So, very well done. Congrats to you. Congrats to all the drivers for sticking it out and really showing that they have the prowess to bring it all together for one of these longer races for the Ghost Racing Cup Series season.
Yeah, and ultimately, we're going to get into later on in the show how this turned out to be a huge gamble by Wheeler in that sixth machine. And he laid it all out there on the line with some tire strategy, and it just wasn't enough to keep Spees at bay. And that 36 machine managed to snag the victory here at Charlotte. And thank you for finally being able to mention me here in the top 10. I was getting a little worried about what I could do in this league, and I know Mama Fuller watches this often, so I just want the family of Wes Fuller to know that he is 11th on this chart. He wasn't quite close enough to get in here, but I had a great battle with him probably for through the last pit cycle and to the end of the race. We were really going at it for that top 10 because we both really wanted to be on the screen. So, Wes, here's your shout out. We worked hard to get on this list. So, we're going to talk about how different strategies factored into this. It was a really fun race to be a part of, and at least the back half of it. So, but before we put the cart ahead of the horse, we're going to get rid of the top finishers here, and we're also going to bring up points. They are still chasing Spees at the top of this chart. David, as you looked through the top 10, what are some of the storylines that are starting to emerge here for you?
Well, it appears that the driver to beat, as he's been at the top for the last several weeks, is Kyle Spees. Looking through the breakdown of points, he is also our first driver to break triple digits in the category of stage points. So, somebody that has prioritized that he needed stage points either to maintain the league or perhaps he took that as, a tale of caution. If I give up too many of these stage points, somebody else can catch me. So Kyle Spees being the racer to chase at this point. But another name that I want to look at down there in 10th place. We've talked about him several times before on this show, but I think at this point in the season, I really have to highlight Kyle Gardner. He has only 3 finishes that are above a top 15. Everything else is hovering right there around that mark of top 15 finishes. And this just really speaks to his consistency as a driver and really earning his way into this top 10 to be in contention come the end of the season for that playoff run.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the beginning of the season. Like, if you are a fan that is rooting for a driver who races about mid pack each and every week and then has flashes of what we would call brilliance uh, periodically, Gartner's the guy you need to look at for the benchmark of where they're going to wind up in points, because he's shown us in previous leagues that that is his method. He's gotten to a Final Four using that method. He has been kind of that steady figure, and it all factors out for him being in 10th, even though most of his finishes, as I understand, hover around that 15th place mark. It's all about grabbing stage points and being opportunistic about surviving till the end, and this race was one of survival, was it not? Man, we had quite a crazy race, and we're going to talk about the tale of two races here. In the first 103 laps, I believe there were 13 cautions in this one, and it was very rough, as many folks in the lobby, many drivers, the race control, not a lot of people thought we were going to be able to finish this thing in the time allowed it. But David, talk to let's recap about kind of the first half of the race. Let's split this thing in half. Let's kind of unpack the craziness that was the first half of the Ghost 300 at Charlotte.
So, two things to consider when you talk about the first half of this race, um, attributing to all those cautions. Number one is perhaps drivers didn't have as much practice as they had anticipated heading into this week, and not really knowing how the car was going to handle under those conditions come race time. The other thing to think about is this is a sunset race. So you're in a period of transition, especially under those first 100 laps with
Mm.
the sun going down, that the track is rapidly changing based on those lighting conditions. So I think those two things really played a factor. And then driver aggressiveness kind of reared its head and led to quite a few of these incidents where drivers were just going for the same place on the track. It's still early in the race, and it led to some cautions that I believe really could have been avoided.
Yeah, and ultimately, a big topic of discussion was during the race was getting restarts under control, and ultimately, as you saw at different points throughout the race, they had to go to single file restarts. Even then, that was still an issue. So, this league here in iRacing is still in its first season. They're still trying to figure each other out. They're still trying to get driver tendencies down, but really, the problems are very evident, and it was extremely evident in the first 110 laps or so of this thing, and then man did it shift. Man did we get a totally different race after this, after we saw quite a number of cautions in the first 100 or so laps, and then we got some really nice green flag runs out of this thing.
Absolutely. For the second half of the race, if I recall, excluding the stage 2 to stage 3 break, there was only 2 to 3 cautions. There wasn't that many at all. Actually, most of the race then ending up running under green flag conditions, causing a whole different style of racing for these drivers to experience.
Yeah, and some great 2 and 3 wide action at points. It just something clicked, and these guys figured, you know what, we're gonna give room where it needs to be given. We're gonna not mess up these restarts, and we're gonna be able to put together these long runs. And most certainly did it produce a thrilling finish here at the Ghost Racing Cup Series, because you saw here towards the end, and I cannot remember if there's been as close to a last lap pass other than maybe Daytona. I don't even know that in terms of when we've been covering this league. But late in the race, single digit laps left, we saw tire strategy really come into play. David, I'm going to bring up the top finishers here once again, just so I can commentate well over this. But we saw that six machine Wheeler do what we talked about in terms of the pre-race show, and that was short pitting and understanding that I'm going to make the most out of my tire strategy. And he went completely different than the rest of the field, than Spies. And Spies did something different than both the Whiteheads in the last green flag pit stop cycle. And you saw 2, 3, 4 different pit cycles start to unfold. David, I know you were a part of a group of drivers who took a different pit strategy. What goes through the mindset of a driver as this is the longest race of the season? Now you're going to put all your eggs in one basket here at the last run, saying this is going to be my strategy for the end.
So I think another thing that really played into this decision for me was because there were so many cautions early on in the race, and we had drivers pitting in just to get fuel to make sure they were making it to the end of the other stages. There was chatter on the driver's radio that, hey guys, I'm running out of tire sets to put on my car. So for me, what it really came down to is I had two sets of tires come that mid stage 3 point, and I decided that I was going to aim for the maximum amount of fuel usage come the end of the stage. I pit with around 40 to go to the end of stage 3, the finish there. And I was really hoping that by doing that and having those two sets of tires, which was an advantage over just about every other driver in the field who we had heard had one set of tires, that I could get a caution and then come in and put that last fresh set of tires on and then really have the advantage to push to the end. Um, what ended up happening was it was a long green flag run most of the way to the finish there, and I never had the opportunity to stop back in and throw that last set of tires on my car. So kudos to these drivers for making the right call. The short pitting is really a fine strategy when it comes down to it. So overall, the fuel window and the tire window for Charlotte was looking to be closer to, for tires especially, the 30
Mm.
30 lap area for where drivers were comfortable and could still maintain some good speed. So I made that call, hoping for a caution, while other drivers like Chris Wheeler, I think, pit a little bit after me and then had the advantage of being up there to fight for the finish, whereas I ended up finishing around that 14th, 15th cut line.
Yeah, and we saw even more different strategies as the leaders were starting to go down pit road. We saw Speeds enter in with both of the Whiteheads, and their pit strategy was very different from one another. And I believe the Whiteheads took 4 tires. I might be wrong. I'm sorry, guys, if I am wrong, but I'm pretty certain on the broadcast, and I heard post race, they really gambled on the fact that. We're going to take 4 and we're going to hunt you down, as opposed to guys who took 2 or no tires. And that didn't happen because those pit stops happened too late in the cycle. You weren't able to take advantage of those tires as quickly as you would have liked. And ultimately, we saw a number 6 machine running for his life at the end of this thing, trying to hold off a hard charging 36 car. And it proved to be a really interesting finish, as different drivers with different strategies came down towards the end of this thing and really put on a good show.
Absolutely. And those strategies just wouldn't have been possible without this green flag style of racing. And I think this is the first time in the season, especially with a longer stage, that we really got to see that play out. So kudos again to these drivers for having that green flag run and then being bold enough to make some of these pit strategy calls to try to earn that win.
Yeah, awesome. And so we are just about out of time here for today. Any closing thoughts as we leave Charlotte for Ghost?
Certainly for these drivers, we need to take a look at what we practice throughout the week. I think those restarts, especially early on in the race, let's try to check up on driver aggressiveness and really just remember that these are long races and there's plenty of time to make up those positions and passes where the first half of this race was a totally different style from the second half of this race. And I think the fans would love to see a lot more of the racing that happened in the second half than the first half.
Yeah, ultimately, David, they are chasing the same guy they've been chasing for many weeks now. Spies finally gets a win here in the Ghost Racing Cup Series. Does that open up the floodgates for a Kyle Larson-esque kind of run as the season moves forward towards the playoffs? We're going to see here on the Spin Move iRacing Network. You're going to stay in tune with all the action going on in our featured league, the Ghost Racing Cup Series. You can find them on ESBN YouTube page, and they are commentated by our friends at SRM. Underneath, David, you'll be able to see our website. I want to encourage you to check that out for different content that we are producing here on the channel and different content that we want to make available for the iRacing community here real soon. If you like what you see, please like, comment, and subscribe. And for my partner, David, my name is Zach, and remember, guys, to keep on racing.